The school library was always quiet. Today it felt different, emptier. Sunlight through the high windows painted rectangles on the dusty floor. Each one seemed like a trapdoor. 11-year-old Finn loved the library usually. He liked the smell of old paper and the way stories hid on the shelves. But today, the silence felt heavy, like something was listening. He wandered deeper into the rows, his fingers trailing along the spines of the books. The air grew colder. He shivered, pulling his jumper tighter. At the back, tucked behind a row of encyclopedias, something gleamed, something dark and out of place. It was a book, but unlike any Finn had ever seen. Bound in what looked like black leather, it had no title on its spine. Its pages were thick and yellowed, like ancient parchment, and as Finn reached for it he saw it. A single, milky white eye stared back at him from the cover. He snatched his hand back, heart pounding. The eye blinked, or had it. Cautiously, Finn stretched out his hand again, each step closer making him feel more uneasy. The book seemed to pulse faintly, the eye boring into him. He swore he heard a soft growl, like a dog rumbling deep in its throat. But that was crazy, right? His fingers brushed against the leather. It was cold, strangely soft and slightly damp under his touch. He had to see. Finn carefully pulled the book off the shelf. It was heavier than it looked, and as he lifted it, the pages started to rustle. But there was no breeze. The whispering grew louder as he opened the book. He couldn't make out the words, but they scratched at his mind like briars. A strange smell rose from the pages, like mildew and something else, something metallic. Blood? An image caught his eye, drawn in faded ink on the open page. It showed a monstrous black dog, all teeth and wild eyes, standing over a figure that looked distinctly human. Finn slammed the book shut. His heart hammered against his ribs. The library, which had been so silent moments ago, seemed to press in on him, the air thick with unseen menace. He wanted to put the book back, to run, but something held him fast. It was as if the book itself was holding him there, whispering promises and threats in equal measure. The shadows in the library seemed to be stretching, growing longer and deeper. The dust motes danced more frantically, caught in a sudden, unseen wind. He felt a cold sweat break out on his skin, despite the fact that the air was becoming unnaturally warm. From the book in his hands he heard a low growl again. This time there was no mistaking it. It was a sound that spoke of darkness and hunger. A shiver ran down his spine. He had to get out of there, now. Finn spun around, clutching the book to his chest and ran. He dodged between bookshelves, his breath catching in his throat, the whispering pages of the book flapping against his chest like monstrous wings. He could hear it behind him now, a heavy padding, like the footsteps of something large and powerful. The growls were getting louder, closer. He didn't dare look back. The library door seemed miles away. His legs burned, his lungs screamed for air. He risked a glance over his shoulder. The space where the book had been was empty, but the shadows there writhed and pulsed as if something unseen was trying to claw its way out. He stumbled, his foot catching on something on the floor. As he fell, the book tumbled from his grasp, landing with a thud that echoed through the silent library. Finn scrambled to his feet, his blood turning to ice as he saw what had tripped him. A large paw print stained black as ink pressed into the dusty floor. It hadn't been there a moment ago. He didn't need to see any more. The growling was right behind him now, hot and fetid, like the breath of a predator. He could practically feel teeth grazing his neck. Finn surged to his feet and lunged for the library door, his fingers scrabbling for the handle. It wouldn't open. The door, usually easy to open, wouldn't budge. It was as if something heavy was pressing against it from the other side, or holding it shut. He rattled the handle, panic rising in his chest like a tidal wave. He was trapped. Turning back, he saw it. The creature had formed out of the shadows, taking on a terrifying solidity. It was a dog, but like none he'd ever seen. Its fur was the color of midnight, its eyes glowed with an inner fire, and its teeth were like daggers, dripping with what looked like ink but smelled horribly metallic. The creature lunged. Finn screamed, throwing his hands up to protect himself. He closed his eyes, bracing for the impact, the stench of decay washing over him. But the impact never came. He cautiously opened his eyes. The creature was gone. The library was silent again, the only sound his own ragged breathing. The shadows had retreated and the dust motes danced peacefully in the sunbeams. On the floor lay the book. Its pages were still now and the eye on the cover was closed, as if in slumber. But as Finn watched, horrified, he saw something else. A single drop of what looked like black ink dripped from the book's cover, and then another, and another. Finn backed away, never taking his eyes off the book. He didn't know how or why, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. He stumbled out of the library, his mind reeling. The library door swung shut behind him, the lock clicking shut with a finality that sent shivers down his spine. The library had fallen silent again, the book resting innocuously on the floor. But the silence was different now. It was a silence pregnant with unspoken horrors, with the knowledge that something dark and hungry was lurking just beyond the realm of sight. And it was waiting.